What's up guys, Mike here, and welcome back to another My Hero Academia review. This week it's chapter 133, and it's a pretty good chapter, I'm not gonna lie. Pretty average to be honest with you, a little bit of fighting though, a little bit of action never hurts nobody, especially with the latest couple chapters being more set up than usual. We do get more side story or side characters fleshing out of their personality and what they're gonna be like, especially Kirishima, but we do get to see the scene of Sun Eater and also Fat Guy as well. The chapter was relatively simple, to be honest with you. It was just a fight between Kirishima and his thug, and him coming up with a couple of new abilities. I mean, actually only the one new ability that he actually came up with, but showing off a few other new ones that we haven't seen before. So saying all that, let's get into the review today, guys. So I'm going to start this chapter off by talking about what happens at the very beginning of this week's chapter, and I guess the end of last week's chapter too. Talking about Sun Eater's quirk getting erased. Now I theorized last week in the video that this had something to do with the little girl and Overhaul's plan, especially the way that Shigaraki brought that dart up to Shisaki in the last chapter and emphasizing that it was being spreaded around a little bit to thugs unknown. And especially these guys, I will get into their origins a bit later in the story because we don't know much about where these thugs are even from. But right now I want to talk about mainly what happened with his quirk enhancement versus the quirk dart. So like I just said, I theorized that the Overhaul gang was kind of manipulating that little girl in some way to try to extract some sort of blood maybe from her that has the ability to erase quirks in some sort of way, like Eraserhead's abilities through his eyes or something like that. But after seeing this chapter, I'm kind of second guessing that. I think that her ability might have something to do with the quirk enhancement, and I think that the quirk erasing might be something completely else, to do with somebody else's quirk, or something like that. Maybe it's just the fact that the guy with the gun, who we haven't really seen to have a definite quirk just yet. It may be his quirk that he's actually able to produce these bullets that actually erase people's quirks when he shoots them, so maybe he can hand them out to other people as well. That would be a pretty overpowered quirk, but it would make sense if that was all that he had for the gun-wise. He actually had to shoot them with it, and then it would be able to erase their quirk and then help their team out in that way. What I'm trying to say here is I think that that little girl, the serum that the thug injected into his neck this chapter that induced his quirk into a crazy enhancement and almost killed a bunch of people around him. I think that that is the result of them using that little girl. Now, if this is the case, it could be extremely bad for the heroes because we have never seen a quirk enhancer before. We have seen somewhat similar of a style from All For One when he used his borrowed quirks. He used like times 100 or something like that. So I guess that is to a certain extent amplifying the quirks, but not to the degree of this. Whereas if you were to just inject this into your body, you're able to have probably like, I don't know, this guy went from little box cutters on his arms to being able to shoot blades strong enough to cut Kirishima out of every part of his body. This is a crazy big jump, and if it were to happen to one of our heroes, say like Kirishima, imagine how extremely invincible he would get. And this can be a huge game changer if it's not A, stopped right away, or if it isn't, then we're going to see a lot of more powerful quirks. And I would love to see this quirk enhancement on someone like, I don't know, Shigaraki. And speaking of Shigaraki, after seeing this chapter in Kirishima's ability, which was really awesome, and how he powered up and how he basically looked like a monster after he was, you know, almost unbreakable, I think that the perfect counter to his ability is Shigaraki's quirk. If you think about it, yes, he's extremely hard, but Shigaraki can actually disintegrate whatever he touches. It doesn't matter if it's steel, it doesn't matter if it's diamond, I'm assuming. I can imagine that it's just anything that he touches he's able to disintegrate. So huge counter for Kirishima's quirk. I just thought about that after seeing this chapter, thought I would throw it in here as well. Another thing I noticed in this chapter is something small, but it may have something to do with some foreshadowing for where these thugs are from. As I said earlier, I would be talking about why they're here and where the hell they came from and how the hell did they get this stuff. And I think that it's kind of obvious they're going to have some sort of relation to the Overhaul gang, but what way, I'm not really sure at this point. The only clue that we kind of have is that every single one of them is not only together, but they also have little scars on their eyes. This may not be something that you picked up right away, but on every single one of the members, they have little scars about right there and right there. And I don't know what this means, I just know that it's there and it happened and it means something. Especially the fact that they also have this serum and this bullet that they could only really obtain through Overhaul, I'm assuming. If I had to make a educated guess, I'm just gonna assume that Overhaul's gang is kind of taking low-level criminals off the streets and gonna test this kind of stuff with them, just to make sure that it works and to see how it goes. And if that is true, then these guys are just kind of pawns in a way. But at the same time, I feel like there's gonna be a little bit more importance to these guys. We know they're actually completely weak. It was just kind of a fight for Kirishima. Now they're all captured. But I think that there's gonna be more to the whole plan behind grabbing random thugs on the street, giving them this kind of thing, and I think we're going to see a bit more of that in the future. We even saw a couple of Kirishima's new moves in this chapter, which I really thought were awesome. Starting with the new red counter, I think it was called, when the guy with the knives in his arm kind of cut Kirishima's face right down, didn't even do anything, and he punched him really hard right back in the face, and he was even letting up on that. It was really cool to see that he's thought of some new moves, even though it wasn't really that creative, and that's kind of what we got in this little mini flashback in the chapter. He was going on to say, you know, he's got to do something to keep up with these guys. Everybody's thinking of new long-range to mid-range moves that are able to, you know, adapt to a lot of different situations, and he's kind of just there being that hard guy. He has to come up with a little something more in order to keep up in a way. And this is not a new technique to, let's say, even though it is kind of a new technique, it's his same old, but it's just from results of his extreme training that he's able to magnify it so largely. And it's kind of almost to the point where it's unbreakable at this point. I imagine it's not unbreakable because there are certain quirks out there that are probably crazy enough to break through this quirk. Like I said earlier, Shigaraki's is probably one of them. But at this point, he looks amazingly cool. But at the same time, he also looks like a bit of a monster. So I wonder if there's going to be that side of the quirk as well. I mean, we've already got that kind of with the other shadow quirk guy. I actually forget his name right now, which is weird. I usually don't forget his name. He's one of my favorite characters. But you know, the shadow guy who has the Shadow, literally the name, I remember the name of his quirk rather than him actually, but he has Shadow and he has to fight that actual quirk in order to stop him from taking over the host body. And what if something similar like that was happening with Kirishima? I'm just theorizing that because simply he looked like a freaking monster in this chapter. So what if it gets to the point where he has to fight a certain part or side of him in order to deal with this magnification of his quirk? Because we usually know that when you have to go up this high, there's usually some sort of drawback or something that they have to do in order to get here. It's not just free. Anyways guys, like I said when I first started, this is a relatively simple chapter, so it's going to be a bit of a shorter review. Either way, I still enjoyed the chapter, and I'm looking forward to Season 2 this weekend. If you haven't seen my Episode 1 review, I suggest you go check it out. I am going to be putting a lot of effort into those anime reviews because I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope you guys are too. But all in all, that's all I got this week. I hope you enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you did, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Peace.